Don't listen to this at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, or you might put yourself at risk of being the next in line of many strange and mysterious deaths at Marjim Manor. This is another spooky winery story just in time for Halloween. And the winery we're talking about today is the Winery at Marjim Manor in Appleton, New York. Of course, there will be multiple mysterious deaths, some ghosts and spirits, and also some wine tasting. This is the American Wine Rebel Show, where we dive into the history of American wine and uncover American wine's best kept secrets. I'm Meg Siobhan, and I hope you poured yourself a glass of something good because I don't like drinking alone. Today, we are going to New York with another spooky winery story. So for this story, we have to go back to 1865 in New York, not too far from the Buffalo area. And there was a house called Marjim Manor, and this is where the Merritt family was living. And one day, Shubal Merritt, who was the father of the family, was sitting in his office when his son comes bursting through the French doors, startling his father, who apparently was cleaning his gun, and he accidentally shot his son. His son died. And the timing of his death is super critical to this story. So it's said that his son Louis, died at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the day. And of course, the family was devastated. So they took the French doors in the house and they actually locked them up. Shubal said that they were not allowed to be opened again. And they remained that way for a while. And a few years later, Shubal, the father, also passes in the house. And his death also occurred at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. After his death, his daughter Phoebe Sophia and her husband take over the house. They're living there with their daughter as well, and things are going fine. Until one day, those French doors that were boarded up and had been closed for a long time, all of a sudden burst open. Phoebe Sophia is standing right there when it happens. She screams, she falls to the ground, and she dies. And when was this? It was at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. So Phoebe Sophia's husband and daughter move out of the house and they start renting the house out because they didn't want to live there. And a gentleman moves in. He was renting the house, and one day some people find his body, and they're not sure exactly when he passed or what he died from, but the time at which his body was discovered in the house was at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. So the Merritt family wants nothing to do with this house. And so they sell it to a man by the name of Charles A. Ring. And he moves into the house, and he moves into the house with a woman who may or may not have been his wife. There's some speculation around what was happening there. Might have been a little bit of scandal, but he moves in there with a woman by the name of Estelle. So they're farming peaches, and that's going quite well for them. It was an agricultural community at the time. So they're farming peaches and making a lot of peach products. And one day, the servants in the house hear a big bang, and they go upstairs to discover Charles A. Ring has died at his desk. The banging sound that they heard was his head hitting the desk. And I'm sure you can guess what time this was. It was, of course, 3 p.m. on a Thursday. So Estelle lives in the house for a while, and she's farming the peaches, and it's going well for her. And she actually passes just from natural causes, old age. And when she passes, the sisters associated with the church take over the house. They're at the house, and one day, as stories have it, they're sitting there by the fire, and their dog was sitting there by the fire with them. And all of a sudden, he jumps up and starts barking at those French doors, and then he just drops dead. And we all know what time he dropped dead at. Of course, it was 3 p.m. on a Thursday. And this dog's death was the last recorded 3 p.m. Thursday associated death. But even today, there's a lot of lore around things that happen in the house. And there have been reported strange happenings around 3 p.m. on Thursdays. Some of the people who work at the winery now have even said that they've seen wine bottles fly off of shelves, lights have flickered on and off, other strange things have happened. There have been sightings of someone who the employees of the winery and others think is Estelle. She's been seen on the front porch of the house, and ghost hunters from the show actually came in and did some paranormal investigation, and supposedly they heard someone say, "Who's in my house?" In the entryway of the house by the front stairs. So there's been a lot of different spirit reports, and the owner of the winery today even believes that there are spirits that live in the house. But like many ghost stories, it's not that straightforward. So there's been a lot of questions around the 3 p.m. on a Thursday timing and whether that was actually true for most of the deaths. And as you probably can guess, a lot of them have been debunked, even going all the way back to the very first death. Lewis, he may not have even been shot by his father. He may have died from tuberculosis. So a lot of it may just be made up stories. But the winery today has decided to take these stories and run with them. So today they market a lot of their bottles with labels that are associated with this story. And so I've got 2 bottles here from the winery at Marjim Manor. I've got Shubal's blush table wine. So he was the father, of course, who supposedly shot his son at 3 p.m. on Thursday. And then, of course, this one, which is my favorite label because it's just so eerie, is Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. And so I'm going to crack these open. I especially like this one here because this is a peach grape wine. And so this relates to Estelle, of course, who lived in the manor and farmed peaches. And so I think that she would appreciate that there was a peach wine. So I'm going to start with this one here, this peach grape Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. So according to the winery's website that I'm looking at right now, this Thursday afternoon at 3 Great Peach Blend is a blend of peaches and the Niagara grape. So the Niagara grape was created in New York near the Niagara region, Niagara County in 1868. So actually not that much longer after the first supposed death at Marjim Manor. And Niagara is a cross between the Concord grape, the same one that's used in Welch's grape jelly, and a grape called Cassidy, which is a Labrushka Native American grape. Because of Niagara's parent grape of Concord, Niagara has a lot of grapey notes to it. And like many American hybrids, it's sometimes described as a bit foxy, but it's usually made in a sweet wine style, sometimes used in some blush blends, or like in this wine here, blended with peaches to create a sweeter, more dessert style wine. It's a cold hardy grape, so it survives really well in New York, in Michigan, anywhere in the Midwest or East. And this is super important because a lot of traditional European grapes, especially ones that need a bit more heat to ripen, like let's say Cabernet Sauvignon, can't grow up in these regions. So these hybrid grapes are really helpful actually to be growing in these areas that European grapes wouldn't otherwise grow. So I'm excited to try this. I haven't sipped it yet. So let's take our first sip of this wine. Okay, so this is definitely sweet. So this to me tastes like a combination of white grape juice and peaches, which makes sense given the viticulture of this wine. But I'm also getting a little bit of peach blossom, some lemon in this as well. So it's not just a straight sugar bomb, which sometimes I feel like we can get with these hybrid wines. This has some nice acid to it as well, and it's balanced even though it's sweet. The peaches add a nice layer to this that masks some of the foxiness that sometimes we taste with hybrid grapes. So This would be a great, what I like to call porch pounder wine. Sitting outside on the porch drinking this, especially on a warm evening or a fall afternoon, would be perfect. So this is a Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. that I would definitely opt for versus one of the spookier ones. And so now let's dig into this next bottle. So I've got this blush table wine, and I actually don't believe the website says what is in this. So we might have to guess based off of what it tastes like. So yes, this one does not say, but I'm excited to open it. What's interesting to me is the distinction between blush and rosé. So if you've got a red grape that you're using to make pink wine, it is a rosé. The skins have a little bit of contact with the juice, which give it a pink hue, but not quite a red hue. But sometimes the word or term blush gets used, especially in American winemaking, to mean one of two things. So blush is sometimes used when you have a rosé style that's a little bit more sweet, because oftentimes traditional rosé is on the dry side. So it's made without any residual sugar or very little sugar. So it's going to be a drier wine. So blush can be sometimes used on a bottle to indicate when a wine has more sweetness to it, so you know what to expect. And then the other time I hear blush get used, again, especially in American winemaking, is when you have a red grape and a white grape and you make two separate wines and then you blend them together, which is kind of a big no-no in a lot of European winemaking, especially for still wines, but it's something that happens sometimes in certain regions of the US. And so there is a possibility that this here has some Concord and Niagara, or either just Concord or Niagara blended with another grape, but it definitely has that grapey smell to it. So let's give it a taste. So upon tasting this, it's got a little bit of that Niagara earthy, sort of foxy funk to it, but it also has a little bit of citrus, some grapefruit, some lemon. So again, it's got some nice acid to it, but it is a sweet wine as well. So not something I would probably have more than like one glass of, but it's a nice afternoon wine, which I think both of these are. Sweet wine a lot of times gets a bad rap for being maybe more of an entry-level wine, but I think it's super important in winemaking to have these wines for people who may not be ready to jump straight into a Cab Sauv and might want something that's a little bit easier drinking. And even for me, don't get me wrong, I love my big, heavy Tannats, Cab Sauvs, Syrahs, but sometimes I just want something simple to sip in the afternoon instead of a cocktail or a margarita, and this is the kind of thing I reach for. And each of these bottles here is only about $12 a bottle, so they're at a super affordable price point too, especially for something that is just an easy afternoon pour. If you enjoyed this haunted winery story, be sure to go back and check out the story on Argyle's Ghost as well, where I dive a bit more into Pinot Noir and sparkling wine, and we'll talk next Wednesday. But until then, happy haunting. Cheers.